there was a time when games were very small. They would fit on a 1.4 megabyte floppy disk. And they were little games like Pong or Frogger or Minesweeper. I remember a game in Windows 3.1 called Ski Free I used to like. And it was exactly what it sounded like. A really tiny character skiing down a hill, and your goal was just to get down the hill and not get eaten by Bigfoot or crash into a rock. That was it. And in that time, when games were so small, they were just a little diversion. It was, at best, maybe a thing that you would spend an hour doing on a weekend just as a way to kill time and amuse yourself. It wasn't a hobby. It was just something briefly fun to do. And then computers became more powerful. They got more capable of having good graphics, and then after a while, text-based games transitioned into graphical adventures, and adventure games became RPGs, and RPGs eventually led the way to MMORPGs. And it really just continued to grow from there. And then we moved into the time of live service games and fast internet connections that made it possible to buy a game and download it immediately. And that game might be 100 gigabytes, and you can just download 100 gigabytes with one click, go make yourself a cup of coffee, and you come back and you've got yourself this enormous game. And it's probably going to continue to get updates too as time goes on, which is really cool. And yet it can make it feel like we're stuck on a treadmill of content that just overwhelms us. And it's the same thing with the other stuff that's not gaming, like social media. We're so inundated with tons and tons of content that it becomes more of a burden than a blessing if we're not careful. And that's not to say that we should be anti-technology or anti-innovation, or say we want to go back to a time when games were primitive because they were better back then. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we should be a little bit more selective about what we are getting ourselves into. Because, you know, when I was a kid and I wanted a game, and that game was going to come from the software store, then I would beg for that one game and I would get it, and I would have to make the most of it for a while. So I just had that one game. It's a lot harder now that we have all this abundance of choice before us. You know, I'm sure you've probably felt that on a streaming service where you have all these movies and TV shows you could watch, and you don't even know which one to begin with because there's so many of them. You're just kind of paralyzed by all the choices. So maybe you struggle to figure out which one, or you just feel like you have this enormous backlog of content. So somewhere in there you have to realize it's not necessary to 100% something. You don't have to finish 100% in order to have a good experience. You can just have a good experience today and then let it be what it is. Even if you, for some reason, didn't come back to it, just let the experience you've had today be enough. Imagine if you went on a vacation, you go to Paris or something, and then you come back and you say, well, I need to go back sometime so I can see the rest of it, because I didn't see the whole country. So, you know, if I don't go back and finish, then there's no point in me haven't even gone at all. It's just a waste of my time. Well, that'd be kind of stupid. You wouldn't do that. You would say, well, I went there and I had a good experience and I saw stuff that was cool and I broadened my perspective and it was nice. And maybe I'll go back sometime if the path leads there. But if it doesn't, that's okay too. And I had a great time and it was really awesome that I was able to do that. That's a more healthy way to look at it, because if you're always putting a benchmark out there that you need to achieve in order to be successful, or in order to be happy, or in order to be able to say that you completed something, then you're always feeling like if you don't get there, you're not good enough. And then it becomes a chore. And then you're not doing something because it's a joy, because you really want to do it. You're doing it because you've made this mental commitment that you need to do that. That's like if I have a streaming service and I subscribe to, say, Paramount Plus because I want to watch Star Trek. And then I think to myself, well, I just want to subscribe to Paramount Plus for a month because I want to get caught up on all the Star Trek shows. All right, so that's great. And then I do that, but I start to think at that point, well, now I have to watch all this Star Trek. I need to get caught up. Well, what if I don't want to watch 2 seasons worth of Star Trek shows? Then now I'm going to start feeling like I'm wasting that subscription. I now have a deadline. I have to watch these shows before that month is up if I just wanted to pay for a month of it. Well, that kind of defeats the whole point, because if I don't want to watch the things, then why would I make myself consume this content just because it's there? And we do that kind of thing a lot. We trick ourselves into feeling like once we got on the treadmill, we can't get off. And we feel like we have to do these specific things in the future to validate our present experience. It's really important to just feel like your life is adequate the way it is. Maybe you do that partly by decreasing the number of things you dabble in, because if you have your hands in 100 different projects and hobbies and different things, and you never really just allow yourself to be present in any one of them, then you're not making any progress on any one of them, and you're also giving yourself anxiety because of all the things that you think, well, I still need to get to those other things that are further down the list. So maybe you take some things off the list entirely, and then you allow yourself to be more present in what you're currently doing, whether it's a game or anything else in life. And maybe you also go back to that concept that life is not about a future benchmark to validate the present. It's about having a good time in the present and allowing it to be always complete. Nature does not hurry, and yet nature is always complete. And when we start to look at life through that lens, then we are more likely to have a good experience, because we don't feel like we have to do everything. We don't feel like we have to bear every burden, consume every single thing that we possibly could. You know, it's okay to miss out on some things. Sometimes I think maybe there's a game I want to play. And, you know, with some of these RPGs, it's not just a quick hour or two. It's a pretty significant time commitment if I wanted to really play through a whole franchise, like, say, Assassin's Creed or something like that. So maybe I don't. Maybe I watch some YouTube videos about the lore because I'm interested in the story and I'm fascinated by the game on some level, and then I just move on. And I put a few hours into learning about a game that I think is cool, but I don't have to personally play through the entire story. You know, these are things where you can have a better time when you stop feeling like you need to get through a bunch of content just because you can. And having a happy life doesn't necessarily mean you don't do anything. It's just when you take the expectation that you have to do something out of the picture, it becomes a lot easier for you just to begin and to do something meaningful right now. Let's say that I want to write a book. That's kind of a big task. And it's a task that's really easy to procrastinate on and then never actually start. So what I found that helps me is don't focus on writing a book. Focus on writing a page about something that's interesting to me. It doesn't have to be a chapter. It doesn't have to be an enormous undertaking. Just write an article. Add something to the journal. And that's one step closer to achieving something bigger right there. And little things do add up. They really do. It's just we tend to get paralyzed by the feeling that I guess little things don't matter. You know, it's like the parable of the talents in the Bible. The guy was given just a little bit of money to be a steward of. And he said, well, I only have a little bit of money, so it's not really going to make any difference what I do with it. So he just buried it out in the yard. And then the investor who gave him the money comes back and says, what did you do with my money I gave you? And he said, well, you didn't give me much to work with, so I just buried it. And he was in trouble because it was a test, you know, to see whether he would be a good steward with a little. Because if he couldn't be trusted with a little, then he wouldn't be able to be trusted with a lot. So sometimes it's just about dialing back our own expectations enough to say, I'm not going to do something huge necessarily. I'm just going to do something. And that's enough. It's enough. But I don't want to do nothing. I do want to do something to where I can say, you know, this is what I did today. This is what I'm working on. And so don't focus on trying to bite off more than you can chew. Just focus on doing something every day. Be present in what you do. And remember that life doesn't require you to accomplish anything specific in order for your experience to be complete. Till next time, thank you for watching.